So I'm Joey Caputo, for those of you who have not met me. I'm one of the state inspectors. And what we have lined up for you first is just the summary of state inspections and state accomplishments. So this doesn't necessarily include what the county inspectors did. We will have that after. So they'll come up and tell you about what happened in their county. But this is basically what Stephen and I did. First of all, we had about 1,800 registrations in 2017, and this map here is not where bees are. This is where the beekeepers are. So if you look kind of in the white area and the red areas, those are where the highest densities of beekeepers are in the state. And then if you look at kind of the blue areas, that's where lower densities are. And we have a lot of beekeepers in this state, and it's a wonderful thing. So we did about 170 inspections over 19 counties. I want to say it was, I actually don't remember how many hives total, but if you want to look at your county, you can see how many state inspections we did in your area. 7 of these apiaries had American foul brood disease. So if you don't know what American foul brood disease, it's the most serious of the brood diseases. We had it in Salt Lake and Utah counties, and then also in Grand County and Kane County. And as far as these hives, how they were managed, we worked with the beekeepers to get them cleaned up. Some of them, we had the hives taken to the landfill for deep burial so that it wouldn't contaminate other hives. Some were treated with the BYU phage therapy that's experimental. And if you don't know about that, come afterwards and talk to us about it. It's really interesting stuff. And one other was treated with antibiotics. Other maladies that we had, 15 cases of European foul brood. So that is this one right here. European foul brood is like a less serious version of a brood disease than American foul brood. We had 22 cases of chalk brood. And for a lot of beekeepers, this proved to be a difficult pathogen to deal with this year. So we've actually partnered with the USDA Bee Lab. We took samples from these hives of the chalk brood mummies, comb samples, samples of live bees, and they're going to be testing them for a whole host of things, pathogens and pesticides, to see what might be contributing to these chalk brood cases that are very persistent. We had 5 cases of sac brood virus. That's this one pictured down here. My laser pointer, I can't see where it is. Let's point to it, it's that one. And then 65 cases of parasitic mite syndrome. By far the largest problem we found with hives this year was with varroa mite, excessive varroa mite infestations. We also participate in the National Honeybee Survey, which is funded through USDA. And this is really an exciting survey. If you aren't that familiar with varroa mite, which is pictured here on the left, varroa mite's an invasive pest. So it came from the Asiatic honeybee, which is actually pictured right down here. This is the European honeybee, and that's the giant honeybee. And the European honeybee does not have very good defenses against varroa mite. When it was brought here to the United States, it caused a lot of problems, and we're still dealing with them today. So the purpose of the National Bee Survey is to sample hives and check for pathogens and pests that are still out there that could possibly get into this country. And so one of them is pictured right next to the varroa mite, the Tropolalops mite. And in areas where Tropolalops mite is a pest of the giant honeybee, and in areas where there's overlap between European honeybees and Tropolalops, it gets into the hive and it reproduces, and like varroa mite, it's very damaging and it vectors viruses. And so we really don't want Tropolalops mite in the United States. We also have these other fine honeybees that are not in this country, the giant honeybee and the Asiatic honeybee. We don't necessarily want these bees in our country either. And it's because they either don't possess qualities that are good for honey production, but then there's also the unknown about what sort of viruses they might harbor. And if they get into the United States and they're mingling with European stock, they might pass those diseases and cause even more problems. Another neat thing about the National Bee Survey is there's a certain amount of funding that goes into pollen testing for pesticide residues. So the funding is pretty limited, and at one point they just eliminated it completely, but we really pushed hard to get them to put that funding back into it. And so I have some 2016 data here, and that's just because it hasn't been released yet. We also have some 2017 data which has been collected, but it hasn't been published yet. But basically, this is what they found in the pollen that was tested for pesticide residues. We had, in 2016, one that came up with an insecticide, two with basically no pesticides, and then in 2017, basically just a breakdown product of a varroa treatment, an herbicide, and an insecticide. Very good information. So we don't just do inspections. We're also heavily involved in trying to promote best practices for pesticide applications. And we worked with the honey industry on this campaign right here. This is basically our Pollinator Protection poster, and it's outside if you want to get a closer look at it. We took these around to different Steve Regan's, IFA, and Home Depot all over the state. We didn't leave out southern Utah or northern Utah or anyone. We took them all around, and we will be doing this again in 2018. Oh, and one thing I should note about this, one thing that the honey industry stressed was that sometimes when we have educational efforts on best practices for pesticides, it can be a little overwhelming and complicated. And so they wanted something that provided information you could digest quickly and remember. So that's why there's three things that are just in big, bold letters. It's avoid applications to blooming plants. If plants in bloom must be sprayed, wait until evening. And don't allow pesticides to drift to non-target areas. And if the person wants to take the time to read a little bit more, they can. But if they walk away with knowing those three things, that will prevent a lot of problems. We also do pesticide education. So this year we did the Utah Nursery and Landscape Association. We also did the Arborist Convention down at Wheeler Farm this year. And then we also do the CEU classes, so the Utah Pesticide Safety Education Program. I don't know if is there anyone in here that actually has a pesticide applicator's license? Okay. Well, if you did have one, you can renew either by taking tests or you can do it by taking courses. And these courses are one way in which they can renew their license. So we try to educate them at these classes. And then we also did a big media event earlier in the year. As you can see, here's my boss, Christopher Watson. He's all dressed up like a Velcro flower. And it was a real fun event. But really what we wanted to do is we wanted to let folks know that even if you don't want to keep bees, you can help bees. And that's by planting food that is nutritious to them. So along those lines, we actually have some seed, and I hope you all picked it up, that's sitting out on the table. Please pick that up. If you need to pick one up for the neighbor, please do so. And educate yourself and neighbors about the importance of nutrition in honeybee health. Because if we can get people planting a variety of plants that bloom year-round, our bees are going to be much healthier. Just like when we're malnourished, our immune systems don't work really well, and the same goes for bees. Okay, so I'm going to turn the time over to Steven. He's going to talk about some other things here.
Perfect, thank you. So we're pretty excited, looking forward to the next season here. One thing that we're adding as far as our capabilities for our lab is quantitative PCR testing. This will bring us up to the gold standard for disease diagnostics when it comes to honeybees, and so we're excited to bring that capability to you. Our goal is by next season to be up and efficient with our new equipment, and this will allow you to get incredibly accurate results. It'll be a gold standard as far as honeybee disease diagnostics are concerned. Just a quick update for those of you who may not know. As of January 1st, 2017, so the end of 2016, antibiotics now require a prescription or a veterinary feed directive from a veterinarian in order to obtain them. And by the way, guys, if you guys have any questions at any time, feel free to throw up your hand. We do on our websites have a list of beekeepers or a list of vets who are willing to work with beekeepers. And so if you go onto our website, under foul brood information here, you can find a link here that says Find a Veterinarian. If you click on that there, it will take you to a list of veterinarians that are willing to work with beekeepers, as well as information on the veterinary feed directive. And if you're interested, there's some more technical details under info for veterinarians. One big thing that we did find both last year, 2016, and this year, 2017, were small hive beetles. This is a pest that is not new to the United States. However, it is new to our state. Small hive beetle was detected last year only in Washington County. We detected it again this year, 2017, in Washington County. And then it was detected for the first year, 2017, that is, in Davis County in 2 separate apiaries. So we had both a commercial and a hobbyist apiary up in Davis County where it was found. And so you can see the small hive beetle pictured here, as well as the larva. We are asking that if you do think you have found some small hive beetles in your hive, please contact us, and if at all possible, try to capture a specimen. If you haven't already received one, there's a flyer that goes over small hive beetle, how to prevent it, as well as instructions for submitting samples to our lab. But this is basically what the small hive beetle looks like. I like to kind of think of it a little bit of a Batman symbol shape. Here. It's called the pronotum. It's the first part of the bee's thorax there. And then underneath here, you can see some club-shaped antennae. Those are kind of the two important diagnostic things to look for. And if you see something that looks close and you're not sure, don't be worried that you might be off. By all means, give us a call, and we'll be happy to come out and take a look, or to look at any samples that you send in to us. So this is just a quick comparison of the small hive beetle larva and the wax moth larva. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with wax moth. You can see that wax moth is much smoother in appearance, whereas small hive beetle is much tougher. It has these spines along its back, and it has much more defined front legs. And a quick, easy test to tell whether or not you've got wax moth larva in your hive or if you've got small hive beetle larva is to just grab it and pinch it. The wax moth larva are real soft and they'll just kind of pop, whereas the small hive beetle larva are pretty tough and they'll hold up a lot longer than a wax moth larva will. Whoa, going a little faster. Anyway, work with me. Okay, so small hive beetle impact. We don't anticipate that small hive beetle will have nearly as much effect as it does in, say, the American South. However, speaking with the Colorado Beekeepers Association, they have expressed that it has been a little bit of a problem for them, and we anticipate it will be a problem here. When a small hive beetle feeds on frames of honey or pollen, it actually ferments the honey, making the honey unusable, obviously for human consumption, but it also cannot be fed back to bees at that point. The biggest damages will be to hives that are already weak or to frames that have been pulled off of a hive and the honey has not yet been extracted. So keep your apiaries clean and keep your hives healthy to try and avoid this pest. And as I said before, if you think you do have it, please let us know. The determining factor for small hive beetle success is moist soil. And so if the beetle larva cannot find moist soil to pupate in, they can't reproduce. This means that the areas with Either moist soil naturally or areas that are irrigated are going to be most at risk as far as small hive beetle infestation is concerned. And by all means, please give us a call, shoot us an email if you have any questions, if you'd like to schedule an inspection. We're always available to chat or to come look at your hives. Are there any questions I can answer quickly? All right.
Don't be shy.
Don't, yeah. Yeah.
The Varroa mite count, you said 65 cases. Is that out of the 170, did they only 65 have Varroa, or is that?
So that's 65 hives with Varroa. We inspected 170 apiaries. The last count on total number of hives was, I believe, 195 or 1,195. But
And that was parasitic mites.
yeah, it was specifically parasitic mite syndrome. Yeah. So those were hives that were either killed or had progressed symptoms of parasitic mite syndrome. Though there are many hives that we find with elevated mite levels that may not be showing PMS at the time that will likely develop it. What's that?
This is a high count of mites.
So it's not necessarily with high mite counts. What we're looking for with the PMS are cappings that have been opened up prematurely with pupa, poorly developed pupa underneath. And then some deflated larvae, and oftentimes people will mistake PMS for EFB or AFB. So PMS is parasitic mite syndrome. I know, a little bit of an unfortunate acronym. And then AFB, for those of you who may not know, is American foul brood, and then EFB is European foul brood. So they look kind of similar because you will get some discolored larvae, you will get some deflated larvae, you'll get some scales kind of forming on the bottom of the cell. But these specifically, PMS can be distinguished from the brood diseases because you'll see those uncapped immature pupa that are still white in color. Well, all right. I think we can turn the time over to our county inspectors.